Remember, you can find this deck and many others on our website at kitchentablemeta.com. Click Decks on the homepage to choose from any of our competitive lists, and don't forget, you can download a PDF of each deck to take with you to your next tournament.
How's it going? Dusty here, bringing you a special sideboarding and matchup guide for my third place Gen Con deck, Vegeta Hand Destruction. Hello everyone, welcome back. I just want to take a quick second before we get into the video and just tell you all thank you so much for the support. I cannot express how much it means to me to have all the comments, all the likes, all the follows, subscribes, emails, just everything has been overwhelming, and it's been so awesome to be welcomed with open arms. This is one of the best communities I've ever been a part of, and it just means so much to be able to bring you guys content. So thank you once again for all the support, and you guys rock. So thank you. All right, so let's get into the video. So this is the sideboarding and matchup guide for the Vegeta Hand Destruction deck. And now, I'm very passionate about this stuff. I love matchups. I love sideboarding. So because of that, this video might be a little long, but I'm going to try so hard to get through this very quickly so I don't bore you guys to death. So I apologize if this video ends up being like 5 hours. I'm sorry. All right, so let's move in really quickly to the sideboard. First up, we have Family Kamehameha. Now, this is a very kind of weird card, right? Like every time I show people this, they're just like, whoa, why are you playing that card? And the short answer is, well, it's in here for one matchup, and that's the Broly matchup. Now, it can be used in other matchups like Champa and some other ones, but mainly the reason why it's in here is for Broly and or the mirror if I'm playing against any other kind of Broly combo decks. And the reason why is because I want to kill their one-drop Broly, and this card allows me to do that without attacking them. Now, the big question I always get is, why aren't you using Gotenks? And like I just said, it's because with Gotenks, I have to combo to get the KO effect, and I don't really want to be attacking my my opponent's leader, especially if they're playing green, because I don't want to give them the ability to to awaken with Furious Yell Vegeta. And so because of that, I feel like Family Kamehameha is a lot better. However, if you do want to run Gotenks, go ahead. The card is awesome. It's very, very good. Just make sure that if you combo with it, that you always use Vegeta's ability, and so that way, since you have to hit them, at least you're hitting them with a critical. So just keep that in mind. In my opinion, this card's better, but please use what you want. Okay, move on to the next card. We're going to go with Ultimate Judgment Jocko. Now, we run 2 of these. The card is really, really good. It's just it's very situational. The thing I'll say about this card, like I said in the last video, is be very careful what matchups you bring 4 of them in, because your opponent, if they kind of know you're running this card, can really put you in weird situations where you don't want to bounce any of the combo cards, and it can really backfire on you. So be very careful. However, this card is invaluable in the matchups that you really need to try to win the combo war. Next up is 2 more Energy Boost Beerus. This card's awesome, and in all honesty, I probably should just be running 4 in the main deck. However, because of the kind of clunkiness of the energy that I have to run to make sure that I do the full evolve change with Broly, I only run 2 in the main board, but I always have the 2 in the sideboard because there's some matchups where the card is just absurd. So, okay, moving on. Now we run 4 Vegeta Prince of Speed. Now, I love this card, and the reason why I love this card is because it's card advantage. This card, it replaces itself and draws you another card. Now, the matchups I run this card, I do run 4 in the deck, in the sideboard, but the matchups I usually run this card is in against decks that can awaken themselves. So against Vegeta, sometimes against certain Ginyu decks, I will always run this card, and I'll usually sideboard out 4 objections and sideboard in 4 of this card. Now, this could be the Gotenks that also draws you a card and untaps energy. However, the problem with that card is it doesn't draw you a card, it just replaces itself. And in a lot of the matchups I use this card against, I'm trying to win the card advantage war. So it's really important that it does draw me another card. Also, it's a very, this card, it's a 20,000 double striker, so it does put a lot of pressure on your opponent as well. So keep that in mind. All right. Next up is the other 2 Awakening Rage Son Goku. I mean, like I said earlier, this card is just criminally underplayed. It's very, very good. Some of the awkward things, though, with this card is usually when I put 2 of this in my deck, I take out 2 Krillin, so it rarely ever gets its triple strike effect. But usually when I run 4 of this card, it's because I want its board clear ability more so than its triple strike ability. This card is really, really good against any of the aggressive decks or against blue decks that have a lot of 1-drops. So keep that in mind. This card's great. And if you haven't tried it out, you should just throw a couple in one of your decks and really see the power of this card. All right, and finally we have God Break Son Goku. Now this is pretty easy, pretty simple kind of sideboarding decision. Essentially, if my opponent can awaken, Beerus becomes a lot worse because it's a lot harder to wipe their board because they can get so many cards during their turn. And if I'm against one of those matchups, I just simply replace the 3 Beerus with 3 God Break Son Goku. In my opinion, the Beerus and this Godson are the 2 best finishers in the game, and so I just have one in my sideboard. I just switch them out based on the deck I'm playing. All right, so that's it for the sideboard, guys. One more disclaimer before we get into the matchups. I should have said this before we got into the sideboard, but just please understand that sideboarding, especially right now, we have a very limited card pool, and some of these sideboard options are kind of loose, right? Like we don't have that deep of a card pool. Also, sideboarding is super situational. Don't just sideboard whatever I sideboard. Please take your time. Look at your local meta and sideboard for what decks you are expected to play against. Don't just copy a sideboard and run into it. Make sure you really have a plan and you really focus, because without knowing why the cards are in here, it's really hard to kind of take advantage of that sideboard. Okay, so all right, so let's get into the matchups. So first up, we'll talk about Vegeta. Now, I hate this matchup, and the reason why I hate this matchup is because they can awaken. Now, Vegeta is one of 2 leaders that can just by being on the board can kind of really hurt our stall plan. And so, it goes without saying, this is obviously going to be one of the harder matchups. Now, one of the first things we'll do is we'll take out 2 Krillin and we'll replace it with 2 Awakening Rage Son Goku. And the reason why is because this matchup is super grindy, right? It comes down to, who can stick a thread and keep it in play for the longest. And Awakening Rage Son Goku really helps us against that. Now, there's multiple versions of Vegeta because he's such a good leader, but, most Vegetas will run a lot of criticals. So they'll run like the 3-drop Vegeta or the 4-drop Goku, and Awakening Rage Son Goku really takes care of that. You can usually kill one of their critical threats and kill some of their smaller 1-drops. Next, we'll take out 3 of the 7-drop Beerus and replace it with 3 of the God Break Son Goku. And the reason why, like we said earlier, is because this is a grindy matchup. We're probably not going to run them out of cards in hand, and so we want that big finisher that can't be countered or can't be blocked to kind of steal the game away. Next, this is usually where I'll take out 4 Objection, replace it with 4 of the Vegeta Prince of Speed. Because this matchup comes down to so much card advantage, Vegeta Prince of Speed really just helps us with that. We get an extra card when we play him, plus he's a threat. It's something that our opponent has to deal with, and it just usually leads to even more card advantage. And finally, I usually take out 2 Ultimate Judgment Jocko and replace it with just the next 2 Energy Boost Beerus. The reason why is because blue, in my opinion, is the worst card for Jocko to kind of do well in, because there's so many threats like Boo and the Piccolos and Bulmas that you just don't want to bounce. So because of that, I usually take him out and replace him with the Energy Boost Beerus. Now I'm just going to go through a couple notes here real quick. One thing is, when you're against Vegeta to Vegeta, never attack Vegeta. Okay, because a lot of the times you're going to play against a more aggressive version of Vegeta and they have to attack you. If they don't attack you and don't awaken you like you're doing to them, you will win the late game. You will actually discard out their hand and you'll win. So they have to put pressure on you, and because they're doing that, it puts you in a situation where you can usually awaken 1 or 2 turns ahead of them, which allows you to still evolve and take cards out of their hand. So just make sure that you don't ever attack them. The one caveat to that, though, is when they're on 5 life, you can go ahead and attack them. The reason why is because you're usually awakened, and you can go ahead and attack them, get that free card, because they're going to awaken next turn anyway. And if they take a health to get critical, then they'll go from 4 life to 3, so you're fine. It's okay. It's almost like you did a damage to them. The other things is, like I said earlier, this is a grindy matchup, so just really focus on card advantage and killing their threats. And then when you're playing against the yellow versions of this deck, be very careful for like Crusher Ball on your Brolys. You don't want to use your Brolys. You don't want to lose your Brolys due to like Crusher Balls and some of the yellow shenanigans. Okay, so speaking of yellow shenanigans, we'll move on to, my second least favorite hero to play against, and that is Ginyu. Ginyu is, I just want to tell you right now, Ginyu is an awesome hero. Leader. He is a lot like Vegeta, where just because he can kind of awaken himself, he can literally be in almost any deck. And so because of that, it's really hard to know what kind of Ginyu you're against. Now, the 2 Ginyus that I see the most are kind of the mid-range Ginyus that try to win with like, some big yellow cards, or the Ginyu Force Ginyu decks. Now, the Ginyu Force Ginyu decks are a lot easier easier to deal with than the mid-range decks. And the reason why is because, you know, since they're playing so many cards out of their hand, it's usually easy to discard their hand. Now, another thing is a lot of the Ginyu Force cards only have like 10,000 power. And so a Sensu Bean can really go a long way into making sure you don't die. But real quick, let me get into the sideboarding part. I kind of skipped ahead. So the first thing we do is we take out, again, 2 Krillin for 2 Awakening Rage Son Goku. That's going to happen a lot when we're against the aggro decks, because it's just such a good, it's like a board wipe tied to a threat. Next, we'll take out 3 of the 7-drop Beerus, again for the 3 God Break Son Goku. Again, same thing with Vegeta. Just because he can awaken, the game plan isn't very good, trying to discard his hand. And then finally, we'll do 2 Ultimate Judgment Jocko with 2 Energy Boosted Beerus. Now, one thing I'll say about the matchup is you want to watch out for the Goldos. You do not want to get your Broly Goldoed. So on turn 1, you want to make sure if you do play a Broly, that you search for another 1-drop Broly, and that way you can kind of, if they do play out a Goldo and kill your Broly, you just play another one out the next turn off the back of objection. The next thing is to be really careful with Raccoon's laser gun. It happens a lot. I'm sorry, racer gun. It happens a lot. I see a lot of people, like, you know, the yellow player will pass with 4 energy open and they'll attack with their leader. And when that happens, Raccoon's racer gun actually just time walks you completely. It'll counter the leader attack, and you can't attack with any of your battle cards. So you always want to, if you think they might have it, attack with one of your battle cards first, and then attack with your leader. That way, if they Raccoon, you can still use your leader's attack. Again, watch out for Crusher Ball, and keep in mind that Sensu Bean is a backbone to the matchup whenever you're trying to survive through the Ginyu Force attacks. Okay, so next is, you know, okay. So how I'm trying to say this is the next deck is very popular. It has won a lot of events, and I don't think it's that great. And I know that's going to be like super controversial, but next is Champa. And okay, I love Champa. I think Champa is a very good leader. However, this deck just really puts it to Champa. And I know that there's that stigma around where people say that Champa just kind of auto beats Vegeta, but remember, this is a very different Vegeta deck. And the reason why is because Champa's effect isn't really card advantage, right? So what I mean by that is when Champa plays out one of his battle cards to attack you, okay, he'll draw a card off the effect. Now on your turn, you get the ability to attack his battle card. And so that puts him in a situation, do I want to save this battle card? If he does, he has to use combo cards to save him, to save that battle card. If he does do that, then he's essentially discarding more cards. If he lets it die, then he's not actually drawing a card. And so because of that, it really puts a Champa player in a really weird situation against our deck, because if they spend too many resources saving their battle card, then you just have an easier time discarding their hand. Also, Champa, especially the mono red versions, have no way to awaken. And so because of that, you can easily stall them out. Now, the blue red version does have result of training, and that is very scary. However, it's not that hard to get it out of their hand, because they are wanting to play a lot of cards out to get that draw effect. And if they do that, then you can easily, you know, discard their hand and get the result out of their hand. So what first thing we'll do against this is we'll do 2 Krillin for 2 Awakening Rage Son Goku. Again, this is for a couple different reasons. It's good against the I call it like the red weenie deck, but it's good against the version that runs a bunch of small drops. It's also good against the Vados version as well, because whenever you play out Awakening Sun, you can usually kill the 2 battle cards they summoned out, and then also put pressure on Vados with that card. And then next, I'll take out 2 Ultimate Judgment Jacko for the 2 energy boosted Beerus. The reason why is because this card is very good against a lot of things that the deck can do. It's good against the Vados. It's good against killing threats like Iron Wall Magetta. It's really good against that card. It's one of the few ways that you can kill it. And it's also good against some of the other big threats. Like killing a hit with it is really good, because one way this deck will sneak a win out from you is if you dip below 3 life into 2 life and they just evolve hit. So make sure you're putting pressure on hit when possible. Another thing is to make sure that you're pressuring their leader cards with Vegeta once he flips. And like I said, a lot of these decks will just play out Kaba turn 1. And so your turn 1 will be, I'll take a life. Use Vegeta's ability to take a life. Their turn 1 will be play Kaba, attack you for 2. And then your turn will be like, okay, cool, take another life, awaken, attack Kaba for 15,000, draw another card. And so now you have tons of cards in hand, and the only way they can save that Kaba is to dump more cards out of their hand. And then you can easily just next turn just counter it or deal with it with your green counter, and then now you have them in a perfect stall. So just keep that in mind when you're playing against Champa. He is not as scary as he seems. He's just a little bit difficult to play around. I think that's why you see him winning a lot of events, is because he's an aggro deck, and those always do well at the beginning of any format. Okay, sorry for the long, kind of drawn-out speech there. Next is Gohan. I actually love Gohan. Now, this is a deck that can be very scary, and the reason why I love Gohan so much is because he doesn't have a way to awaken, but his effect is so powerful that he actually puts a lot of pressure on you. It's a fun match to play. It's like I call it like the thinking man's match. It's like you have to try to figure out, you have to kind of, you both are trying to bait each other, you're trying to keep your life, and it's tons of fun. Okay, so first off, we take out 2 Krillin for 2 Awakening Rage Son Goku. I'm sure you guys are seeing the theme so far. I do this quite often against a lot of the better decks. Next up is we take out three of the 3-drop Beerus and replace it with 3 of the Godbreak Son Goku. Now, we only do this if we're playing against blue green Gohan. If we're playing against the mono green Gohan, we don't do this. We just keep the Beerus in because it's very easy to stall out our opponent. And then next up, we do the whole take out 2 Judgment Jocko and replace them with the 2 Energy Boost Beerus. Now, you can also take out the objections in this matchup and replace them with the Vegetas if you think they are going to have like the results set up. But again, I like to keep objection in against the results because you can speed out discard and usually get the results out of their hand. So the big thing that Gohan will try to do, though, to try to awaken in this matchup is he'll try to use Furious Yell Vegeta. And so because of that, we want to make sure we're saving our Broly promos, our Energy Boost Beeruses, anything that can kill them and just immediately get them off the field. Like they will usually get a card off of us. We have to be very, very careful not to let them awaken off of that effect. Next is if you let them draw, if they're attacking you to draw, then that's a good thing, right? So if they're attacking you, they're essentially speeding up your awaken, and that's extremely important in the matchup. Second of all, to that same kind of effect, you can also use your critical ability to pressure them a lot, because if you take a life and attack them, they will almost always dump a card or two to try to not take a life because they want that draw ability. And one thing a lot of Gohan players don't realize is when they're dropping cards out of their hand to not lose a life, they're oftentimes they're like netting no cards once they do draw, and that allows you just to easily discard their hand once you move into your discard plan. Okay, and the last deck I want to talk about is Broly. And the reason why is because I hear so many people talk about, how Broly is such a good deck, and, I'm already planning to do a video about it, but in my opinion, Broly is one of the, if not the worst leader in the game. And so I kind of want to show you guys how easy this matchup is, but it's a little tricky, and what I mean by that is it's one of those matchups where you just never attack Broly ever. You want to keep him at 8 life, it's fine. Now, the problem with doing this is, once you awaken, he can start making you discard cards for free, but it's fine because, you have multiple ways to draw cards as well. So it's not really you discarding a card because you can draw another card off your effect, and you draw a card every time you attack once you're awakened anyway. So you just kind of stay at the same amount of cards and then just win with the Beerus plan. But with the sideboard, we replace 2 Krillin with 2 family Kamehameha. Like we said earlier, it's to essentially stop the Broly plan. Now, the one way that Broly will beat you is if you let him get his Broly combo off. It can very easily kind of put you in a really bad spot. Now, luckily for us, since we're running objection and most Broly decks are mono green, they don't have the ability to kind of accelerate into that discard phase. So we'll usually just kind of discard their cards first. Second, we'll take out 2 Ultimate Judgment Jocko for the 2 Energy Boost Beerus. Now, if you want to keep the Jockos in, that's fine, because Jocko is actually pretty decent against this deck because their combo phase is as bad as ours. However, I like the Energy Boost Beerus a little bit better, so I can make sure I can stop that Broly combo. Okay, so that's it, guys, for the matchup guide and sideboard guide. Starting tomorrow, I'll have 1 match a day for the TCA Gaming store tournament event. And if you guys have any suggestions, by the way, any comments, anything I can do better for these videos, please let me know, guys. I'm doing these for you. It's awesome to see you guys' comments, so just keep them coming. And thank you all so much for watching. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks.